Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaskar. You have stepped into a course that is going to change the way that you look at data. Not just how you analyze it, but also how you communicate it. My name is Nivid Desai. I serve as the Program Executive at Writing Studio IIT Gandhinagar. Welcome to Writing for Data Science. This course is at the intersection of analysis and communication. As all of us know, data analysis is not just about coding and models. It is about solving real-world problems. And that is exactly why every single thought that goes into solving those problems needs to be communicated. And not just to one audience, across multiple stakeholders. That is where this course comes in. This course prepares you with the foundations of writing, especially curated for data science. We will discuss audience analysis, critical thinking, logical reasoning, as well as storytelling that is native to data science. So join me on a journey at the intersection of numbers and narratives. I'll see you in class. Namaste, hello and welcome to Writing for Data Science. My name is Nivid Desai. I serve as the Program Executive at Writing Studio IIT Gandhinagar. And this course will take you on a journey to explore the interesting intersections between numbers and narratives. This course is born out of a critical inquiry. What if writing stops being just a medium of communication and it starts becoming a perspective through which we look at analytical, logical, and critical sides of data science? I understand that writing would represent the creative side, the rather subjective side of thinking, while data would represent the more objective, the more concrete side of thinking. And matching both of them may be challenging. But in this course, we will take a step-by-step journey to look at how we can merge the critical inquiries of writing with the objective truth presented by data. At the beginning of this course, I must emphasize the approach through which we will look at writing in this course. I understand that many of us would look at writing as a product, meaning that there will be a format, there will be a set flow, there will be a set checklist of things that you must include whenever you are writing the document. And that all of this will ensure that there is a uniformity across all your documentation. Of course, that is an integral and important part of your academic and professional journeys. However, this course attempts to move one step forward. This course will not only look at writing as a product, but it will emphasize writing as a process. We will look at not only how we write, but how we think about communication. What do we understand when we try to formulate a thought and try to put it out through the medium of writing? What does it mean to think like a writer and not only through the means of purpose-driven communication? So, we must start reorienting our perception of what we mean by writing and communication, especially within data science. So in today's lecture, let me take you through both of these outlooks, writing as a process and writing as a product. Let's first begin with writing as a process of information. We first begin with collecting the information, then we move on to arranging it. The next step is analyzing that information. Then we interpret the information. And in the end, we present the information. This is writing as a process. This will be molded in different kinds of purposes and different kinds of outcomes as we move along in this lecture. However, this is the bare bones structure of how we look at writing as a process. Let me take you through each of these steps independently. Let's begin with the first step, collect. Collect includes researching, as in exploring reliable sources, conducting interviews, or performing observations to gather information. It also includes brainstorming, generating ideas or themes by jotting down thoughts, concepts, or questions that are related to the writing project. And it ends at organizing your sources, maintaining notes, references, or tools, for example, any note taking apps that you would be using to keep track of your findings for later use. All of this is the first step of putting all your ideas together, that is, collecting. Then we move on to the next step, which is arranging. This is where you start looking at patterns. You examine the patterns by identifying different trends, themes, or relationships in the collected data. You evaluate the evidence. You assess the credibility and relevance of the information to your writing objective. And you compare perspectives. You analyze contrasting views or interpretations to strengthen your arguments or your narrative. Once that is done, you move on to analysis. You analyze. While analyzing, you create an outline. You develop a framework that outlines the main sections and subpoints of your piece. Then you categorize the information. You group the similar ideas, facts, or arguments under specific headings or themes. This helps you establish a flow. You determine the order in which the ideas will be presented for clarity and coherence. Once you have analyzed the information at hand, you interpret it. You have all the dots and you start connecting them. You draw conclusions. You develop insights, arguments, or themes that are based on your analysis. You develop a perspective that formulates your unique viewpoints or thesis statement to guide the writing process. And once you have interpreted all your findings, you refine the message. You clarify the key takeaways for your audience and ensure that they align with the purpose of your piece. This helps you arrive at the final stage of the writing process, presenting. This is where you start actually putting the pen to the paper. You draft and you revise. You write an initial draft and revise it for coherence, style, and flow. You edit and then you proofread. You focus on grammar, punctuation, formatting, and readability. And in the end, you put it out to the public. You share and you publish. You deliver the final piece to your intended audience, ensuring that it suits the chosen medium. The medium could be print, digital, or spoken. This is as far as writing as a process is concerned. We looked at all the different stages that helped us arrive at the final output. And that output brings me to writing as a product. Throughout your journey as a data science communicator, there will be different kinds of documents that will be part of your entire communication profile. I have tried to boil them down to 3 basics, and we will move on to different specifics throughout the course of our curriculum. So when we look at writing as an output, as a product, these are the 3 kinds of products that I would like to discuss for today's introductory lecture: reports, policies, and pitches. I have divided them into their key components so we understand what is expected out of us when we try to design our communication to suit one particular product. Let's first look at reports. Reports require clarity of purpose. Clearly define the objective of the report, such as presenting the findings, summarizing progress, or making recommendations. You, as a data communicator, need to be clear about why you are writing this report, and all your writing decisions need to be aligned and augmented to that purpose in the beginning. Once that is done, you structure in terms of a format. You use headings, subheadings, tables, charts, and bullet points to make the information easily accessible. This is what helps your audience navigate through your writing. And in the end, the quality of your writing must be evidence-based. Support claims and observations with data, examples, or citations to ensure the credibility and reliability of your findings. The next document, the next product that I want to share with you is policies. If you are on the governance and policy making side of data analysis, this may be one of your key core competencies. Policies require conciseness and precision. You must write clear, straightforward language to avoid ambiguity and ensuring that the policy is easy to understand and implement. There is no room for any miscommunication or misinterpretation. Then there is an alignment with goals. You need to ensure that the policy reflects the organization's values, legal requirements, and strategic objectives. And in the end, a policy document is not a theory piece. It needs practical application. You need to include all the actionable steps, roles, and responsibilities to help the users apply the policy in a real-world situation. The more clear, the more precise you are in that kind of writing, your policy will be better implemented with each iteration. Finally, I want to bring you to a rather dynamic piece of product, pitches. Pitches have an engaging hook. They start with a strong opening to capture attention, such as a question, a statistic, or a compelling story. They have a focused message. They clearly articulate the core idea, value proposition, or solution in a concise and memorable manner. And in the end, they ask a call to action. They end with a specific and actionable request, such as scheduling a follow-up, investing, or supporting the ideas. These are as far as the product end of writing is concerned. Throughout this course, we will look at both writing as a process and as a product. But rest assured, this discussion will be engaging, will be learner-centric, and you will do a lot of reflection and exercises as we go along. So, how is this course designed? We will begin with a module on Introduction to Writing in Data Science. Then, we will move on to Audience Analysis, an entire module dedicated to who is our audience, how do we define the proficiency of that audience, and how do we design messages to cater to that audience's preferences and curiosities. Once we cover that, we will move on to the next module on critical thinking and logical reasoning. That's right, both of these modules would have given you some idea that we are not here to learn writing only as a product. We are developing a perspective. We are developing a process that can help us think like a writer and not only write in the best possible way. So I was talking to you about the module on critical thinking and logical reasoning. We will look at what is the logical framework of looking at data analysis. How should we think more critically while communicating our insights, recommendations, and suggestions? We will also look at what are the common mistakes that are done in data analysis and communicating that analysis to different audiences. And in the end, we will arrive at the final module of our course, Storytelling with Data. This is an interesting intersection of numbers and narratives. We will look at how common storytelling structures, narrative arcs, and different kinds of storytelling techniques can help us communicate our data more persuasively, in a way that helps us convince our audience in the best possible manner. What we have learned with pitches will start reflecting in the final module on storytelling with data. All along, we will have different case studies, different real-life examples, some simulations, and some guided exercises that can help us cement our learning and make sure that all of this is required, necessary, and practically implementable in our daily professional and academic journeys. So, what's next? In the next class, we will discuss the overview and importance of writing in data science. However, here's a food for thought for you. These are some questions that you can start thinking about now that we have laid out the entire journey of writing in data science. What role does writing play in data science? What do you think? Second, what kind of language have you seen being used in data science writing? And why do you think that the particular kind of language is prevalent? These kinds of questions will help you understand that writing is more than just putting words down on paper. It requires a rather intentional, a rather critical bent of mind that will help us understand the role of communication in shaping decisions, in shaping outcomes, and building a future that we believe in. So, join me on this journey. This is going to be an interesting ride through numbers and narratives, and we will find out the different nuances that we discover, not only about data analysis, but also about data communication. From the next class onwards, let's look at all the key components that we need to learn in order to build a strong foundation for this odyssey that we are undertaking. Welcome to Writing for Data Science. I will see you in the next class. Until then, stay curious, keep learning, and all the best. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaskar.